Like all well-adjusted Westerners, I have pleasant, vaguely erotic dreams every single night about finding an unspoiled area of land and turning it into a sprawling, smoke-belching, pollution-shitting industrial complex. That's why I signed up for the Satisfactory alpha a goodly while back. It's the sort of thing that seems aimed at my particular brand of brain, being, as it is, spawned from a night of hot and sweaty passion between Factorio and Infinifactory. For anyone who hasn't played those games, the principle is simple enough. Get raw material. Process raw material. Use end result, either personally or to spend on progression, or as an intermediary product to craft something else. The challenge comes from having this cycle steadily increase in complexity until you either ascend to a level of all-seeing Zen or snap and spend the rest of your life in a cave. Upon landing, initial impressions are good. Factorio, perhaps by necessity, perhaps by nature of the overhead viewpoint, always had the feeling of a blank canvas rather than a unique setting. Satisfactory's world is both vibrant and filled with interesting things to see and hit with a taser, and this does a much better job of selling it as an alien environment. True, much of this increase in immersion is caused by the switch to a first-person view, but Coffee Stain Studios seem to have consciously augmented this by the use of scale. Some of the alien lifeforms you encounter are behemoths, and most of the structures you build are equally convincing pieces of heavy industrial hardware. When starting, you get to place a central hub for your base that both acts as a focal point and also collects together all of the things an engineer would need after planetfall, neatly fulfilling a new player's basic requirements while staying true to the setting. Seeing the base build up around this hub is pleasantly satisfying, and being able to fully explore the installation you've built can make it rewarding to focus less on efficiency and more on creating something with character. The hub also acts as your progression system, and you can unlock tech advances largely at will as long as you have the resources to pay for them. When you fulfill those resource requirements, a lander at your base launches to take those resources away, and you're provided with the blueprints for your new toys. Unfortunately, this lander has a timer attached, and that felt like an unnecessary additional bottleneck when taken in conjunction with the resource requirements, especially after you've created an orbital tether that would theoretically make the lander obsolete. While I'm talking about potential negatives, the choices of scale and viewpoint could bring their own issues when your installation becomes more established. With Factorio, following a process is easy due to the viewpoint. By being placed amongst the machines yourself, it's not always as straightforward to find which particular machine you forgot to hook up to the power because you're an incompetent fucking idiot like me. The developers seem conscious of this, and they've helped with things like being able to align buildings and having large status lights on machines to provide a form of long-distance error tracking, but I'm still concerned this may not be enough, especially if you choose to take the option of building vertically. With Infinifactory, building vertically was made simple by use of a jetpack. While Satisfactory does eventually unlock a jetpack as well, it's a late-game item, and by that point your production lines may look as confused and haphazard as my nation's approach to Brexit. This potential for a messy sprawl could risk alienating some players, though I suspect its target audience will, like me, see it as an additional organizational challenge on account of us being masochists. One thing they've clearly placed a lot of effort into is the conveyor belt system, and this is a great relief as the game is likely to succeed or fail based on logistics. It's largely automated and can easily handle curves and changes in elevation on its own, but if you want to create something more complex, you can use adjustable height conveyor poles, a kind of waypoint system that gives you the opportunity to dictate which shape a belt forms. This can be handy for routing belts away from high traffic areas or making crude conveyor belt images of a knob. This abundance of effort from the developers is clear in a number of other ways. I'm the sort of person who likes little touches, and this game has a number of them. The cute little robo-miner that's full of character and charm. The craft button on your manual work table that glows white hot and throws sparks if you use it for a while, subtly admonishing you for not automating. The module names and cheesy intro video that are exactly the sort of things some advertising executive shitbag for a soulless multiplanetary corporation would think was down with the kids. For an alpha, the amount of polish on show is impressive and speaks of a passion for the game that is to be commended. Whilst my time with Satisfactory was rather short, I can honestly say that I enjoyed it and left wanting to play more. It's one of those games that'll leave you thinking about it after you stop playing, contemplating better ways of doing things, and planning your next base expansion. All in all, it's the sort of thing I'm guaranteed to buy, right? So, we need to talk about the whole Epic thing. Now, before we start, number one, no, I don't believe Epic are an arm of the Chinese government, and this is all a ploy to infect your computer with communism. The recent story about the Epic launcher making a copy of a Steam file shows that the likelihood of anything deeply nefarious happening without anybody noticing is basically nil. Number two, no, I'm not a Steam fanboy. There are plenty of things Valve do wrong, and they absolutely need to reevaluate who they are and what they stand for, rather than passively mumbling that the community will fix it. Lastly, number three, no, I'm not against another storefront or launcher. It's a pain in the arse, but that's the price you pay in today's market for the consumer-friendly bonuses you get from competition. And that's the problem. Competition. Competition is choice. Competition is having multiple ways of doing something and letting the one that best serves a purpose become dominant for as long as that stays true. Competition is not limiting a game to one storefront. This is something that's already happening with games made by the owners of delivery systems, but bringing third parties into that with paid, timed exclusives escalates a situation that is ultimately anti-consumer. Or, to quote somebody else, the thing that I feel is incredibly important for the future of the industry is that the PC platform remains open, so that any user without any friction can install applications from any developer, and ensure that no company, Microsoft or anybody else, can insert themselves by force as the universal middleman and force developers to sell through them instead of selling directly to customers. That was Tim Sweeney, current head of Epic, during an interview back in 2017, warning against the dangers of allowing anyone to implement limits on distribution. I get that Coffee Stain are a relatively small company. I don't blame them for making this decision. I get that a massive wedge of cash can provide security in a notoriously difficult industry. I get that Epic are offering a greater share of the revenue. In your shoes, would I have made the same choice? If I had the livelihood of multiple families to consider? Maybe. I don't know. What I do know is what affects us, the end user. And having fewer options is, at the end of the day, not in our interests. What's more, I can't help but feel the best way of making Valve pay attention would be to raise the issue on their own platform. If the store page on Steam had a message saying, please buy this on Epic as we get more money, that's going to breed far more sympathy for developers than simply not being there. If Coffee Stain had done that, I wouldn't be recording this rant. I'd have already bought it on Epic. Like it or not, Steam are currently running the show. Publicly shaming them about how they're running it seems to me the best way of making them change, and, in doing, making the entire gaming industry better for all developers, regardless of storefront. Swapping an anti-developer practice for an anti-consumer practice is just changing who gets kicked in the bollocks, and no amount of explaining why you had a great reason to do that is going to help with the swelling. So, should you buy Satisfactory? Well, that depends on how you feel about all the things I've just said. If you think I'm overreacting, then go right ahead. It's a fun game with a lot of charm, and I can see it offering long-term enjoyment. But if you agree that this, and other Epic Store exclusives, some more rightly criticized than others, risks setting a dangerous precedent, then I'd urge you to wait. At least in a year, when this becomes available elsewhere, you'll know how each storefront has behaved in the meantime, and have a better idea of which one deserves your money.